Hello and welcome to today's video. My name's Haley and we are wrapping up the 12th gene key today, a pure heart, with the SIDDHI state of purity. And the title of this chapter is called Swallowed by the Void. I like that visual, swallowed by the void, to be fully engulfed by God's presence, embraced in love. These are a few other ways to say that. Swallowed by the void. What comes to you in your mind when you hear those words? For me, something inviting and loving comes in, although I do see how this could be seen through a very different depiction as well. So, interesting to see what comes up for you when you hear those words, swallowed by the void. So, this 12th SIDDHI state, just a reminder here, this is a state, not a frequency. It can't be measured because all siddhis are eternal in nature, omnipotent, omnipresent, cannot be put on a scale. This state of being can only be understood by the higher mind, Richard Rudd says, which is a fancy way of saying the heart. And the heart doesn't think and analyze and try to figure things out like the mind. The heart comes into gnosis through feeling. And so with that frame of mind, we can start to, ironically enough, use our mind and understand the fact that in order to truly understand this SIDDHI state, it has to be felt into. You cannot analyze your way into gnosis. This is something to be felt into, to be experienced, to be witnessed, to be observed. And to do any of that which I just said, one has to be present. So the best way to invite in this SIDDHI state is to be present, operating from the higher mind, the heart. Okay, and I know I just said that SIDDHI states can't be measured, but ironically enough, in the next line, he says, vanity and purity are mirrors at two ends of the spectrum of human consciousness. Fair enough. Richard Rudd, and then me on top of Richard Rudd, are trying to explain things that can't be explained. So, as is the paradox of life, for this to make as much quote-unquote sense as possible, he is using this imaging of a spectrum. So you can envision that on the spectrum, on one end is the shadow frequency of vanity, and on the other end is purity. He says with vanity, your lower self falls in love with itself. So naturally what comes to my mind when I read that is this Greek myth, I think his name is Narcissus or something. It's where the word narcissism comes from. And he's staring into the lake, looking at how beautiful he is, and then he falls into the lake. This is what I think about when I hear the way Richard Rudd has described vanity. Your lower self falls in love with itself, falls into its own reflection. Whereas purity, on the other end of the spectrum, is when the higher self falls in love with itself. Okay, so this starts to beg the question, what is the lower self and then what is the higher self? How do I differentiate? And this is not as cut and dry, black and white, as the mind would like it to be, right? This is something to be felt into once again. And I find the easiest way to decipher whether you're acting from your lower self or your quote-unquote higher self is to simply ask this question to yourself, is what I'm doing right now, partaking in, loving? Am I acting in love or out of fear? Very simply put, when you act out of fear, you're acting from your lower self. When you act in accord with love, truth, harmony, you are in attunement with your higher self. And in addition to all the acting, if you're simply being, you're naturally acting from your higher self. Being, the art of relaxation and presence, is in attunement with your higher self, always 100%. And I would say the best way to get back into alignment with your higher self is to simply stop all action, whether it's from love or fear, and just simply be still. Because once again, all being is automatically in attunement with the higher self. And back to this, right? He says vanity is when your lower self, when you're acting from fear, falls in love with itself. You continue to keep reacting to fear and create more fear, and it's this downward spiral. Whereas the purity is when the high self, the version of you that's either just being present or acting from a place that's loving, starts to fall in love with itself. What could that look like? That means you could fall in love with being service-oriented. You could fall in love with a job that allows you to extend your creative gifts to help others. You could even fall in love with the fact that you just feel so relaxed. That's purity. Loving that you feel relaxed is a demonstration of the SIDDHI state of purity. And he reemphasizes here, he says, purity is when the divine falls in love with you. Your behavior, your thoughts, your feelings, the very air you breathe must resonate to one purpose. And in the past, I forgot which gene key this is, but I offered you, we were talking about purpose. Oh gosh, I'm totally blanking on which gene key, but I offered you the very simple purpose that I believe really applies to everyone. Of course, only if it resonates with you, is very simply put, my purpose is presence. Because, as I explained, sometimes we're all out here running around, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? I gotta figure it out, or I gotta figure out what I'm meant to do here, what my dharma is. Like, very simply put, your purpose is presence. If you're present in every moment, naturally that will start to unfold and unveil in a way that's more obvious to the 3D eye. And then you'll be able to place that label on it. Oh, my purpose is teaching. My purpose is helping in soup kitchens. My purpose is taking people on hiking tours, whatever, right? But all of those can fit under this umbrella, this overarching purpose of presence. So let's read that line again with that understanding of this purpose I've offered you. This means your behavior, the way you're acting in life with yourself and with others, your thoughts, what's zooming by in the monkey mind, your feelings, the way you feel about drinking coffee after 3 p.m., and the very air you breathe must resonate to one purpose of presence. Can I drink the coffee with presence? Can I breathe the air with presence? Can I behave? Can I, when I'm interacting with my environment, do so with presence? As I'm thinking or watching thoughts zoom by, can I be present with them? And as feelings arise, oh, it's really hot in here, or God, I feel a little sad. Can I just be present? That's all this is. And he calls this the sphere of divine love, right? When you're able to resonate to this purpose. And this helps an individual come into attunement with the Siddhic state of purity. Vanity, as we have seen, pursues you right to the end of your journey. And he mentioned this in the shadow chapters, how the last shadow to leave is vanity, because it's so fundamental to how an individual navigates this matrix we're in, or whatever you want to call it. Even when you're living from a higher frequency of your gift, vanity is still there. So these are not mutually exclusive. And I think that's very important to really drill home. It's not like you either have the gift or you don't. You can have both frequencies active, shadow and gift. You can fluctuate throughout both within one day. And he says, for this miracle to occur, for this Siddhic state to dawn in your consciousness, you have to give up everything you've attained. Every past story, every attachment to what's mine. This is my coffee. This is my YouTube channel. This is my hair. You have to be willing to give all of that up. And this is because the vessel must be absolutely pure and flawless. And then he goes on to talk about the concept of purity and how it's kind of misunderstood. And before we get into this section, I think it'd be interesting to contemplate, you who's watching, what does purity mean to you? What's your definition of purity or your current understanding? So maybe pause this video, and if you feel so inspired to answer that before continuing, do so. So after contemplating that, Richard Rudd gives us a very concise definition. In human language, it can be applied as an adjective to almost anything, this word purity. But at its highest frequency, it can only be applied to one word: the heart. So I feel he doesn't really elaborate on that. He just says purity is the heart and that it's misunderstood. Do with that what you may. Again, I feel the reason he's not providing more annotation on this is because this entire gene key is meant to be felt. It's not meant to be logically understood. And I feel that's why he kind of gives us this truncated definition of purity. So perhaps meditating on that. Purity as emanating from the heart, being of the heart, being related to the heart. Meditating on that concept could be probably more revealing than any talking I could do or any writing Richard Rudd could do, which is, again, why I have an inkling he just decided to cap it there. So then he kind of goes on a little rabbit hole that I'm going to skip here about how it's like a little chakra rabbit hole, which I'm totally into that, but I also acknowledge the fact that many people are not. And so to serve the whole, I'm going to skip this section. By all means, look up A Pure Heart, the 12th Gene Key, if you are interested in reading about that. I'm going to skip to the part where he re-highlights that letting go of all of your hard-earned knowledge of the mind and meeting your own death is how you are reborn into this acidic state of purity. Oh, and then he brings it all the way back to Gene Key 3 through the eyes of a child, and he says, the person who is truly embodied becomes like a child again. Through their eyes and through their heart, they can perceive the divine. So he starts to describe the type of person that is embodied within the acidic state of purity. And he says, if you were to meet someone with this energy, you might feel like they don't really belong in this world. Quite literally, they are otherworldly. They're mystical, they're magical, they have like maybe a fairy essence to them. Something mythical about them. Which he notes is ironic because they're actually the most natural expression of what it means to be human. So very subliminally there, he kind of draws light to the fact that we as a human species have strayed so far from nature that when we meet someone who's pure, we actually feel like they don't belong here. But really, we as a whole have just strayed so far from what and who we are that when we see someone being who they are, we're genuinely like, what? That's mystical and crazy and cool, and like, where did you come from? So I think that's interesting that he says that. Nothing can contaminate their purity, these people that walk around with this frequency. They live humble lives, and sometimes they are unseen by the world at large. They pass quietly through the world. They live simply, yet everyone they meet, they remind that purity can really exist in conjunction with human form. So every person they pass, they inevitably inspire, whether that be instantaneous or a little bit down the line. It's like they leave little energy marks everywhere they go. Good vibes, like you can just think of like literally a fairy sprinkling fairy dust is what this person is. And if you are the person experiencing this otherworldly acidic state creature, whether you notice the fairy dust they sprinkled on you immediately, or you don't see it till you get home and take your shirt off and change into your PJs, or say you don't see it for like a few years, and then one day you noticed it rubbed off your shirt and onto the camera lens. One day you'll become aware, maybe not even consciously, but definitely subconsciously, of the effect that this person has had. And they have the inability to view anything in a negative way. And again, this isn't to say that negative things don't happen to this person. It's just that their perception is so clear. Back to an analogy I used in Gene Keys 1 and 2. They're wearing the bright colored glasses. Everything they view in the world is seen through these lenses. When something quote unquote bad happens to them, they see it as an opportunity to elevate into more love and experience the human range of emotion. If you sound the word purity within your heart and your mind over and over, you will actually feel its quality residing within your own heart. And he notes that this is not an affirmation. I am pure, I am pure. No, it's not that. You can't just run through the motions, say I am pure 100 times and feel it. You actually have to desire to feel it. It doesn't matter how many times you say it, it matters how you say it. So this is an interesting activity to try. If you who's watching is interested, sound the word purity within your heart and your mind over and over once again, with true, genuine intention, attention. Actually feel this quality of purity boiling inside of your heart as you say it out loud or in your mind, and see what happens. If you do this properly, he says you'll start to feel the quality of purity residing in your heart space. I want to know what that feels like. I'm definitely going to try this. Oh, and then he adds something little glittery for us at the end there. He said, words used poetically and vibrated within the chambers of the heart have the power to pierce through the layers of fear that envelope the hearts of others. And you know, this makes me think of a poem I wrote. The first poem I shared out loud, actually. And it came from my heart. I was very scared to share it because a lot of it was just a very vulnerable poem, honestly. I was just terrified to share it. But I did know that it came from my heart. And I did sense there was a power to it because of the messaging. It's about how to accept yourself. Cheesy, but true. So anyways, I'll link that poem in the description. But I do remember that day feeling like when I shared it, it pierced the hearts of others, and it also even pierced mine more somehow through utilizing my own channel to share. Words that come from the chambers of the heart have the power to pierce through the layers of fear. That's powerful. Purified thought has an even more powerful effect than purified spoken language. So this is interesting. He's essentially reminding us that thoughts are more powerful than words. And he gives his reasoning as to why this is, which is a little woo-woo. I'm going to take it as truth because when I read it, it made my heart smile. And for you who's watching, you can make up your own mind. Do you think purified thought or purified spoken language is more powerful? They are both powerful. And it doesn't really matter, actually, if you choose one to be higher than the other. I think just really drilling home the gnosis that they both count for something is important. But he does say that a pure thought will affect all levels of creation and all beings with creation almost instantaneously. Zoop. And yeah, if we're looking at this through the quantum lens of reality, that would make sense because thoughts, quote unquote, travel through space and time much quicker than spoken word. That's a rabbit hole for another time, though. So allow your thoughts to be imbued with the essence of divinity, essentially, is what he's saying here. I'll leave you guys with this last line. You are so pure that it is not possible for you to exist as anything other than existence itself. In crossing the great cosmic throat center, you are swallowed by life itself. So that was the 12th gene key. Stay tuned to tune into the 13th gene key, an unlucky number. I have a feeling it's going to be pretty lucky though. I'll catch you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks again for tuning in with me for this Gene Keys episode. I also just wanted to come on here and start promoting my one-to-one coaching that I offer to women and girls ages 16 to 35. If you've followed me on Instagram for a while, you might be a little bit familiar with my story. I was a model in New York City for 5 years, and in that time frame, I did quite some damage. I developed a really severe eating disorder, body dysmorphia, chronic anxiety. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even go out to dinner without thinking about how much calories, how much I'd have to overwork out in order to compensate for what I was eating. All of those issues led to quite a depression and turned into PCOS, and I also lost my menstrual cycle for over 5 years. All of this amalgamation of issues led me to soon realize that something needed to change. I went through much work. Many people helped me to get to where I am now, and I'm so thrilled to say I'm living such a more abundant life, and I don't feel zapped and drained and fear of judgment anymore like I used to. I would love to offer what I've learned through my own embodied experience, the meditative techniques that have gravitated toward me, and the own verified games that I've made up and curated to help you walk home to more of you and who you really are, so that all of these things can stop draining your energy. You know, all the constant comparison to others and to your people on Instagram, all the over-analysis about working out and what you're eating or what you look like. All of these things are not what life's about, as cheesy as it sounds. And I would love to help you come into more unity with you if you struggle with any of these things and you're a woman or girl between the ages of 16 and 35. So feel free to reach out to me if one-on-one coaching sounds resonant. You can feel free to DM me through Instagram or contact me via email, both of which will be left below in the description box. So much love and aloha to you guys, and I'll see you all in the next video.